Welcome to the Jewish Exponent podcast. I am the host, Jared Safran. I'm here with Aviva Menche, who is currently in Cherry Hill, but she is a Northeast Philadelphia native who made Aliyah in 2020 to go live in Israel. She is back now due to the tragic Hamas attack. She was able to get out and to stay here with her parents in the United States, along with her husband and two young kids. Aviva, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So I wanted to have you on because I feel like, well, first of all, we're trying to get people to talk about their experiences in Israel during this time to help illuminate it for our Philadelphia audience. And you have a particularly interesting story of how you ended up living there. So we wrote about you in 2022. You were playing in the Maccabiah games. Is that how you say it? I think that's how you say it. For Israel, you were playing netball. Former high school basketball player, and sport had some similarities. That's why you picked it up and why you're in it. But we were also able to tell your backstory in that article. You grew up in an Orthodox household with strong Zionist values. Over time, you recognized, as you put it to me, that Jewish prayers were often about aspiring to go to Israel. And you asked, why not do it if we have the option? And you lived and studied in Israel for a year after graduation at Midreshet Harova. And after that, you kept asking your mother, why next year in Jerusalem? Why not this year? And finally, in 2020, at age 28, it was next year in Jerusalem for yourself, for your husband, Ariel, of 5 years at the time. He had the same dream, and you guys went and you did it. Now, 3 years later, you're back in the United States due to this situation. So let's start, as all these stories do, since the attack on that morning of October 7th. Just what happened?
So let's rewind to the night before.
Yeah.
It was the day before, a Friday. It was a regular Friday, exciting for us. It was, the Jewish holiday of Simchat Torah and Shabbat coming up. Went to the beach. I live in Tel Aviv, so went to the beach with my kids, prepared for the holiday. That night, we went to the synagogue, danced with our friends, had a great time with the kids. And then we were, our biggest worry at that time was which of the services are we going to go to tomorrow, at this synagogue or that one? And then went home, went to sleep. And then the following morning, I woke up, my baby was 3 months old at the time. So I was waking up multiple times a night to feed him still. And then when I woke up early in the morning to feed him, all of a sudden we heard a siren going off. And we had just moved apartments. So we were still a bit out of sorts. We heard the siren. We were surprised to hear it. We've had, since moving to Israel, we've actually had sirens and, rocket attacks coming toward Tel Aviv on 3 separate occasions coming from Gaza. So we knew how to respond, but we were surprised to hear it at the time. There was no warning. We didn't have any awareness of tensions going on. So we heard it. I grabbed the baby. My husband grabbed my daughter, and we tried to go to a safe area. Our apartment doesn't have a safe room in it. All the new buildings in Israel are required to be built with safe rooms, but our building is an older building, so there's no safe room in the unit, and there's also no shelter in the building itself. So the next safest place to go is the stairwell. So that's where we went, and we were actually debating where's the safest place in the apartment. We're north facing. The rocket's coming from the south. Maybe in the actual. Is it safer in the stairwell? We weren't sure. We're trying to figure all these things out. Meanwhile, we are
to try to figure that out in that moment when you still had no idea what was going on.
We were just in that moment. We were just, it's very quick. You have a minute and a half to take shelter. So
yeah.
we just went to where we thought was the safest in that moment, and then afterwards we started to have the discussion of next, if there's another siren, where are we going to go? Who's taking which kid? Right. What, we plan. And we thought, okay, so maybe
You take your
this
favorite
is
kid, take your favorite kid, right?
well, we do it by weight now. So my daughter is 5, and so I take the lighter one, and my husband takes the heavier one.
Yeah,
That's how. And when she's awake, she knows the drill. She knows
yeah.
that where to go. We discuss it.
Mhm.
But when she's sleeping, we kind of have to grab her and take her out. So
Right.
um, at that point, we had the one. I think we had two sirens close to one another. The second one, you could actually feel there were like a big reverberation in the apartment. So we were like, did that hit? Like what's going on? We were still like not sure what's happening. And we went, to the hallway, and we were speaking with the neighbors. We're Orthodox Jews, so on the holiday on Shabbat, we weren't using our cell phones. We didn't really know what was going on. And so we were talking to the neighbors, and we didn't really get a lot of information from them either. I don't think people just didn't really know what was going on yet. And I thought, oh, this is probably just another one of those seasonal rocket attacks that we get. And, we'll have two. And then I said, hopefully it will end soon. And they looked at me like, oh, yeah. So maybe they were reading the news, but I didn't get much information. And then my husband, we were discussing, should he go to synagogue for the prayers? Should we not? I mean, originally we were all going to go, but then I said, I'm staying home with the baby. I want to, have, quick access to the stairwell to a safe place to shelter with him. And my husband said, I don't want to be, I'm not scared. I don't want to, terrorism to win. I'm going to go to the synagogue with our daughter. And, we discussed which path is he going to take? Are there shelters along the way? Make sure that, does the synagogue have a shelter? And so when we felt like, we had a plan. He went, and we actually did discuss which path he would take, just in case I were to go later, if I felt comfortable, so that we would overlap. And so he went to the synagogue. I think while he was there was another siren, and they went down to the basement to shelter in the synagogue. And he said that usually, for Simchat Torah, you have a long time in the synagogue, and there's like a lot of, everyone gets a turn to get called up to the Torah and everything. But in this case, they just did it quickly, got people out, and people came home. And we were just, throughout the rest of the day, we weren't really sure what's going on. When my husband was in the synagogue, he started to hear some rumors. He came home and he said, someone told me that there are terrorists in, like, that have overtaken villages in near Gaza. And I told him, I don't know. That's just a rumor. I don't know if I believe that. Let's wait. Let's not panic. Let's wait till the holiday ends and see the news. And then let's like only worry when we have to really worry.
Yeah.
So we tried to live, I guess, in a little bit of ignorant bliss, a little bit of ignorant bliss. I still like worried about the rockets, but we didn't know the full gravity of the situation.
It's so
Um,
fascinating because
yeah.
so I talked to a guy who lives on the main line in the Philadelphia area,
Mhm.
and he had a similar story about how he couldn't look at his phone. He saw all he heard all the notifications coming in, but he just couldn't look at his phone that whole day because he's Orthodox. He wasn't in it like you guys were. You guys were actually in Israel and you couldn't look at any updates. That's even more wild.
Yeah, and I think, we do have neighbors who are not Orthodox, and most people in our building are secular. So
Mm.
we figured if there's anything we really need to know, we'll know. We'll
Right.
know about it. And the siren is there. There are apps to give you the notifications on your phone, but there's also the siren that we could hear from our building. So we felt like we were trying to still identify in our new apartment which siren is our area and which is one in the distance that we're um, you know hearing, which one that we're hearing, because sometimes we could hear things that were not actually in our area.
So
So after the Shabbat,
the app will say if it's a serious enough situation, if you're in immediate danger, the app will tell you to evacuate or something like that.
so the app will ring the same siren that's being rung outside, but some people are in the shower, or they're they're in a place where they can't hear well, so they have it on their phone, and they can get the same alert on their phone. When I had the phone on later, it did give it the alert like 1 second faster than
Yeah.
the siren reached me, because it's immediate, and you have to wait for the sound to travel at all. And it rings as well, and then it will notify you whether it's a rocket attack and you should take shelter, and then it notifies you. It says stay in the shelter for 10 minutes afterwards because you can still have debris from the rocket. If it's intercepted by the Iron Dome, you can still have debris falling down and causing damage.
Mm.
So you're supposed to, they notify you that on the app to stay in for 10 more minutes. And then they also will notify you if there's a terrorist infiltration, which was that was a really scary thought that we had after immediately following once we started to get the news, or there's even this idea that there could be terrorists infiltrating. We're not that far from Gaza. We're only, we're not that far of a drive from Gaza.
Yeah.
And we're wondering, they hadn't tracked everyone down yet, and did anyone make their way up here? We don't know. So
Yeah.
that made everyone a little, nervous
Yeah.
to
All
go
right.
out. And
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
so we had like a conversation in the building WhatsApp group. Some people were saying we should
Yeah.
lock the building to be secure from terrorists coming in, but then other people said, well, there's a higher chance of people needing to shelter from rockets and get into our building.
Yeah.
So it's like, and that's, a lot of people, it's scary to have obviously those worries. So when that was, when Shabbat ended, we turned on our phones, we started to get flooded with the news and the information, and we were just in shock like everybody else, I think, that saw the news from outside of Israel. We were in shock that something like this could happen in the first place, shock at the barbarity of the details that are coming in. And then the fear of also getting, the rocket attacks, and the fear of the terrorist infiltration. So it was a combination of all these like emotions. And in my personal, I know some people were, emotional right away, and going in and out of crying. For me, it was more like a shock. And then I went from shock to like numbness very quickly, because there was just so much. Like the mind can only comprehend so much like barbarity at one point. And you're also kind of in a fight or flight situation. You kind of like ready, trying to
Yeah.
be ready for the rockets and sheltering. So that's like how the next few days went, until we heard the military get up there, and also Netanyahu get up and say, our first priority is securing the borders.
You guys sleep
And
that night? That
yeah,
Saturday night?
well, because I have a baby, I'm not sleeping very much anyway. And I
Fair.
would say it's much harder to sleep. One of the issues when you have a baby, you get to feed them, is getting back to sleep afterwards. And when you get up in the middle of the night, and every time you get up to feed your baby, you also check the news updates, it's even harder to get back to sleep afterwards.
Yeah.
So I wasn't sleeping very much in general, and we were running on a lot of adrenaline still. And the kids were supposed to go back to school. My daughter was supposed to go back to school the next day after being out for the holidays for some time. So all the kids were expecting to go back, and we tell them, no, you're not going back. You're home for now.
Yeah.
And we didn't know when school, the whole, basically everything kind of paused, while on the one side, while in terms of like school and our normal day-to-day routine was
Yeah.
on pause. But then there was also this great mobilization of our troops, people getting called up. So that was the question: who's getting called up in our family and friends?
Yeah.
Were
How
they
did you
going?
explain it to your daughter, who is old enough to at least understand what's going on around her?
So that was something that we were trying to figure out and discuss. And we started off saying, we wanted to shelter her. We didn't want her to have to deal with this.
Yeah.
So, but we do want her to know enough to be safe and to feel safe. So originally we just told her and she knew about rockets before. When she was younger, we had the rocket attack. So when there was a rocket siren before, we told her the siren tells us we have to go to a safe place. And she asked, why isn't my house, isn't my room a safe place? Said it is a safe place, but sometimes we have to be extra safe. And the siren tells us that, so that we can make sure to be there. And then we can be safe. And we didn't really talk about rockets much, but they go to school and they hear from other kids. So if you don't explain it to them, then they're going to hear it from another kid. So I know that already at that point, there was a girl in her class who told her that there's these bad guys that are trying to hurt us, and they're sending rockets, and we have to shelter. So she had already been exposed to that concept. And in the school she had already been exposed to, because of the previous ones, she had already been exposed to this idea of like, when there's a siren, all the kids run to the safe room. So she knew they have one in her school.
Yeah.
So she knew about that, but we didn't tell her about the massacre at all. We didn't tell her about so here we just said the same thing: there's a siren, we need to go to the safe place. However, we know she's listening to everything we're saying. And it's very hard when you're all in the house, there's no school, you're home all day together, and
Yeah.
you're going through these emotions and you're reading the news, and to not talk about it around her. And you think, oh, she's watching TV, she doesn't hear, but she hears everything.
Mhm.
And so they start to pick up on things. And so she was basically starting to say things like, um, she was starting, whenever she would hear a sound of an ambulance, which does sound a little bit like the siren. So whenever we would hear an ambulance or other like bump, like sounds, she would say, "What is that? What is that?" And I say, "Don't worry, it's a different sound. If there's a siren, we're here with you. We'll take you. Don't like." And she'd be like, "I'm going to sleep. You're going to wake me up to take me to the safe place, right?" "Yeah, don't worry. We'll be there to wake you up. We hear the siren right away, and we'll take you. It's not far to the stairwell." We try to reassure her that she will be safe. And there were a lot of, and we a lot of recommendations going out about how the school sent us, and other chats about how to speak to your kid about this.
Right.
And it also depends on her age. She doesn't know how to read yet. I know that a friend didn't tell her daughter, was trying to shelter her daughter from it, but her daughter already knows how to read, and she
Mhm.
was outside and she saw the posters of the kidnapped people, and she saw
Yeah.
the kidnapped children, the hostages, and her face turned white. And her mom explained it to her what was going on. But it's tough. So in a way, it's good that my daughter's young enough that she doesn't really understand to that extent, but she does know, and she can sense tension. Both kids, you could definitely sense the tension early on.
Yeah.
And they would start playing. We would go to our one activity. So in the following week and a half that we were still in Israel, our main activity, we were in the house pretty much all day. And then once a day, we would go out to the playground, and some other friends who lived on the same like few block radius would go to sometimes we would meet with them in the playground.
Mhm.
And we would make sure, there's an underground parking nearby. So I'm sitting there plotting, how do I get to the underground parking with both kids? I get the older one and the younger one, and we run with the stroller, and then I leave the stroller there. And then, this is what I'm thinking in the playground.
Yeah.
And you hear the planes overhead and stuff like that. So
Right.
it's stressful. You're not exactly relaxed, but you want to get out of the house. So we went, and she would start playing with her friend, like, where do you hide from the siren? Let's hide under the slide. Let's hide under in the playground. And so,
Yeah.
these are healthy ways that kids are coping with the situation, but it is sad that they have to do this. And
Yeah.
it was something that we were thinking about when we were deciding whether we wanted to, evacuate the country. And recently, my daughter here, now that we're in the US, she said, this was a funny, sort of funny, kind of sad conversation I had with her. She said to me, can I go in a rocket ship? And I said, only astronauts go in rocket ships. And she
Good
said,
answer.
and she said, well, there's a lot of bad astronauts in Israel right now.
Yeah.
And I said, no, there's a different types of rockets. And she said, oh, well, right, we're in America now because Israel is at war, and it's not safe for us in Israel now, so we're in America.
Yeah.
And I said, well, yes. Um, and she's like, are there bad guys? She asked me about bad guys. She's talking a lot about bad guys lately. And are there bad guys in Israel? And I said, they're far from our home, and we have the soldiers there that are keeping us safe. And so then she said, oh, like the soldiers in our family. And she started naming the people in our family. And I said, yes. We have one person in our family who's working on the Iron Dome, and he's protecting us. We have other members of our family who are in probably in Gaza right now, but we're not allowed to know about their whereabouts. So that's the assumption. And I didn't go into that detail with her, but I just said we have soldiers that are protecting us. And we started talking about people who are soldiers.
Yeah.
And I told her that also kids in her class have their abbas, their dads are soldiers too. And so we
Yeah.
started to name all those kids that their dads are soldiers. And so that's the focus with her, that we just want her to feel like she knows. We tell her the truth of
Mhm.
what's going on, but like a limited truth, and try to focus on safety and not on fear, so that she doesn't have to worry too much.
At what point in that week and a half, it's a pretty long time to have been there after this happened. It must have felt that way too, just sitting in the house. Did you guys decide, all right, we're gonna try to get one of the US flights and go to the United States?
So we I think it was at first our thought was like, no, we're staying, we're going to stay here. Then I started to see the people around me like doing amazing things. When I talk about mobilization, not only were they calling up our troops, but like people were volunteering. They were getting out. They were getting equipment to soldiers. They were cooking food, getting clothing, getting organizing housing for people that were displaced. All this amazing stuff. I mean, really, to see what people can do. It was like almost like your own little, voluntary army
Yeah.
going on around with all the civilians. Everyone really like stepping up, and I saw this happening around me, and I thought, I'm not doing any of this. I'm sitting here at home with my kids all day.
Yeah.
I did help with getting some equipment down to our one of our relatives in the army, some protective gear for them. But for the most part, I felt like we weren't able to contribute that much because we were home with the kids all day. My husband trying to work, I'm trying to, I'm there with the baby. Um, Getting just food, going shopping, and going to the playground and getting them, bringing food home, cooking for the kids, taking care of them was already like a burden and like difficult and so difficult for us. Um, and so I thought, there's reason to stay if you're going to help. And there is what to say about staying to support the economy too, which is also a factor. But for the most part, I just saw that my daughter was starting to get making these comments about the rocket sirens, and in the playground I saw her making comments, and I thought, um, if we're not really contributing that much because we're in this state with a new baby and everything, and our daughter, like, why traumatize our daughter if we can avoid it? Let's consider the fact of, my husband and I, he weren't like, he originally was like, no, we're not leaving, like, and I started to tell him like, well, what are we doing here? Like, are we really even helping? Maybe in fact, if we go back to the US and we get our daughter childcare, and you can, focus better, focus more on your work, and I can then focus on helping from here, from the US. And we have other friends who had the similar rationale where they said, maybe I can actually do more from outside the country right now than
Yeah.
inside the country. So that was part of our thought process. But we still weren't sure. We said, we're going to feel it out. We're going to see, is it good? And we also wondered, is it going to escalate to the point, we didn't know at that point, is school going to start up again? Or is, Lebanon going to get involved? Is Hezbollah going to get involved from Lebanon and start shooting like a million rockets at Tel Aviv? And we
Yeah.
can't even leave and we don't have a shelter. So it's just like in and out of the stairwell all day. So we're sitting here thinking like that's a possibility. We also had so what we had done is we booked a flight to actually Austria on our own through El Al. We booked a flight, not to Austria. It was to Ireland. It was just what was available. We started to look up the closest flight. We were wavering between these feelings of it's fine. It's still relatively safe. We'll be okay. To being
Yeah.
like, oh my God, we need to evacuate. Like, whether this is World War III and we need to like get into a safe place. And so we were wavering between these phones. We said, let's just book a flight that we can move. And then if we decide to move it, we can move it. And
Yeah.
then we have our option. We won't be like feeling like we're trapped here. So we booked this flight. And then what happened was, um, over that second weekend, we were there for the second weekend. And actually the second weekend was interesting in its own way for people who are keeping Shabbat, which we could talk about later if you're interested. But um, we the U.S. started sending these emails out to their citizens in Israel, because we're dual
Yeah.
citizens. So they started sending these emails out about these evacuation flights that they were providing,
Yeah.
and they sent out a few emails about this evacuation flight saying like, this is your opportunity. Get out now while you still can. We highly encourage you to take these flights. While like that was the language, like, which,
Bold
it
subject
is like
lines.
a war zone, bold subject lines. It was, and then they sent like another email about like they're sending on Sunday this, because there may not even be enough room on the airplanes. We're going to send a ship
Yeah.
from Haifa leaving. And so we saw these messages and we thought, oh my gosh, what if there's some intel that the US has about something that we don't know? Like,
Yeah.
they're really sending these emails with like urgency to evacuate.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's rockets, I mean, we were living under a threat, but we were worried that it would escalate to a point that would be really
Yeah.
dangerous,
So you
really,
guys
really.
got on one of those. What was that process?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
so what happened was we basically showed up at the airport. They said, we don't know. We went on. They said we don't know if you're gonna have. Well, actually, we went to sleep the following night saying we still don't know what we're gonna do. We woke up in the morning, and my in-laws called us, and they were also starting to get worried and said, I think you should just take the flight, this evacuation flight out. And so my husband booked a taxi for 2 hours later. We packed in 2 hours for this like evacuation. And I kind of felt like we were really evacuating a war zone. This
Yeah.
like panic packing. I was packing like our all of our documents, our birth
Yeah.
certificates, our all those personal documents in case we like ended up needing to relocate or something. Like we just didn't know what the future would be. So
Right.
we took all these documents. We're leaving like in a rush, and we didn't know if they would be sending us to a cold place or a warm place. We knew we would go to the U.S. eventually, so we packed like a few t-shirts, a few long sleeves. Like we tried to just throw in a bunch of random stuff. Packed
Yeah.
for the kids, everything. We took like a taxi to the airport, hoping that you're not going to get. For me, like being on the road is very scary. There's people who are a lot braver than me driving down, bringing equipment, people
Yeah.
um, in Israel, driving to farms to volunteer and stuff like that. But I was so nervous to be caught in a car during a rocket uh, attack, and you're stuck with nowhere to shelter. You just go
Yeah.
and lay on the side of the road and hope for the best. So
Yeah.
I really was, praying that we wouldn't have that situation. We were lucky we didn't have that. We got to the airport, and we got there, and you could start right away to see these flags of all these different countries, like the German flag and all these
Yeah.
different countries that were evacuating their people. So we found the American flag. And I did feel like a lot of in that moment, like a lot of pride in being an American citizen,
Yeah.
and that my country came um to our rescue to help us to take care of us. And it was really a smooth, easy process. We got there, we gave our information, we wrote it on this piece of paper,
Yeah.
and they just said, okay, the next flight's leaving about an hour, is going to Athens. And so it
Georgia.
ended up being delayed. Athens, Greece.
Oh, Greece. Okay. I thought it was, yeah.
Greece.
Yeah.
And so we went to take that flight. It ended up being delayed. Whatever. We got
Yeah.
on the plane. We got to Athens, and in the airport, we're booking the hotel for
Yeah.
that night, and we didn't know like how long are we going to stay there. We arrived. We ended up arriving in Athens. One of our suitcases didn't come in, but we were luckier than the previous flight, who none of their suitcases came in.
Yeah.
So it was the baby's clothes. We were able to cope while we were in Greece with just the few that we had in the carry-on, and then on our way out we found his suitcase. But we went to
Did you
Greece.
was it a
Yeah,
US organized flight back to the US from Greece, or did you have to worry about that yourself once you were in Greece?
that we had to worry about on our own. We booked our own flight.
Okay.
So yeah,
Okay.
not cheap. The US flight, we gave our information. They're supposed to bill us for that flight. And
Yeah.
then for this second flight, we just booked one to Trent to Newark in
What
order to
did
be with my parents.
what did it feel like once you got on the plane and you knew you were gonna be safe? Probably for the first time in a week and a half.
So there's a mix of feelings, because on the one hand, you kind of there's a weird feeling of like that you're kind of abandoning your people or something when you're leaving. That we felt like, are we like deserting our country right now?
Yeah.
But we did plan on coming back. It wasn't like we're like leaving forever. We're just going for a trip, um, and we'll come back. There was that kind of feeling, but then on the other hand, it did feel like we were evacuating, and it was really nice to feel like I won't have to worry about sirens for a little
Yeah.
bit. And but you're still our bodies were still used to reacting to that. So basically, took maybe a week or so to stop reacting to every sound and every boom, and like jumping and thinking
Yeah.
like I need to go run to a shelter, because you're like so on such high alert. The brain just kind of adjusts to that way, and then it takes time to get out of it. So it was a relief to get out, but then at the same time, when we landed in Athens, there was this kind of stress of not knowing what the environment would be like there. What's the anti-Semitism like in Greece right now? In Israel, we had the rockets, but you knew that your neighbors, you knew that the people around you were on your side, and they were going through a similar trauma that you were going through. So
Mhm.
there was a sense of camaraderie in that, and a
Right.
sense of understanding in that. And it's and it's therapeutic in a way to be with other people who understand you. So when we left and we went to Greece, um, you kind of felt alone. We kind of felt alone. And then when we drove in that taxi ride to the hotel, right when we arrived, one of the things if you've ever been to Athens, there's a lot of graffiti. So there was graffiti everywhere. And in big letters, we saw Free Palestine.
Oh
And
boy.
so we thought, uh-oh, like, I don't know, I guess not everyone here is likes us, and
Yeah.
we probably should be careful. Should we say we're from Israel? Should we not say we're from Israel? Should we just say we're from America? Like, what should we say? We ended up telling people that we were from Israel, anyone who asked, because it just, whatever. We
Yeah.
wanted to be honest, and this is our situation. And then we did one day in Greece before we got on the flight to the US. And it was interesting because we went to the playground there, and almost everyone in the playground was Israeli. Um, Everyone who had evacuated, there were like two kids there speaking Greek. And I
Yeah.
think they were so confused. Why is everyone else in this playground speaking this other language? Because
Yeah.
the kids were all talking in Hebrew with each other. So there was in that was a little bit comforting because we didn't feel like, oh, we're these like, just these people who ran away by ourselves. There's okay, a lot of people with children right now are
Yeah.
evacuating if they have the option in order to, shelter their kids a little bit more and give them some semblance of normality
When
in
you got
normalcy
back
in this time. Yeah.
when you got back to Cherry Hill, I know from doing the story on you in 2022 that your mom was a little ambivalent about you going to Israel. She was like, "Oh, well, maybe you can wait until next year." Was she happy to have you back despite all that's
Oh
going?
yeah. I mean, she's a big supporter now. She loves visiting us. And actually my brother got married in Israel this year. So they were all in Israel visiting just recently. And, they're very happy to have us come visit and spend time with them, but they're also upset about, the situation. It's nice to be with family at this time and to be able to talk with them. I think, American Jews around the world are feeling the repercussions and
Yeah.
the mourning of what happened and what continues to happen and the stress of that. So it's not like we went. So yes. So she's very much supportive of our living in Israel. Talks about moving there herself. And even now, although you feel safe in the U.S. Um, with the rise of having to worry, should I wear my kippah? Should my husband wear his kippah? Should he not? Can I put a mezuzah up, or will someone target my house? I mean, these are things we don't have to worry about in Israel. I mean, that's
Yeah.
what makes it that kind of place, our home, our sense of comfort there. So I
Yeah.
think, she understands that as well.
Yeah.
If I answered your question.
Definitely. So last question for you, because we only have a few minutes left. Zoom's going to kick us off. Um,
Yeah.
you made Aliyah because you believed in doing it. You built a life there. You settled in Tel Aviv. You joined two synagogues, as you told me for that story last year. You're raising your kids there. You played for Israel in the Maccabiah games. What did it feel like to have to then come back to the United States, even if it is only temporary?
Um, so I'm really grateful to have the option to come to the US, in a
Yeah.
time like this. And um the community here has been in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, where we're staying with my parents. They've been super welcoming, really nice. My daughter is going temporarily to school here week to week at the Jewish day school. My mom has a gym that offers babysitting services, which is amazing, and I can go to the gym. And there's no rocket sirens, so that's a nice piece of it too. And it's nice to spend time with family, see the grandparents, visit with some friends who are here. So we are, while we're still sad, because of everything going on, and there's, on the one hand, we are trying to enjoy our time here with family, but we very much look at it as like a vacation or like a short trip that we're here just until things calm down. And we especially with seeing the uptick in anti-Semitism in the US, even more so feel like Israel is our home, and Israel is where, we can safely practice being Jewish. And we 100% plan on going back from day one. It's just been a matter of when, and when that will be. People have made the suggestion to us, oh, are you relocating here? Are you moving here? And we just said, no, 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 that's our home. That's where our life is. And we when I'm exercising here, I'm really practicing for netball, getting back to it. Plan on going back to training with the team when I get back home to Israel, and we're looking forward to joining our communities that you mentioned back at the synagogues and spending time with friends. I'm hoping that the rocket sirens, the current plan is to stay. In the very beginning, it was hard not having a concrete plan psychologically. So the current plan is to stay here through Thanksgiving, spend time with family, see friends, see hopefully my brother here in the US had a baby, hopefully see his baby. And then the idea is hopefully by then as well, the rockets will slow down and it will be a bit easier there. School is already back up and running in Israel. So we look forward to going back. We're happy to be here with family. It's been a nice break psychologically, very like mental good for our mental health in terms of the not having to run from sirens all the time. But it's also hard to be away from home. Happy for the option to live in my parents' house, but it's also we miss our home back in Israel. We're looking forward to going back, and I wouldn't be surprised to see that actually more people are interested in making Aliyah after this because of these the concerns with anti-Semitism outside of Israel.
That's an interesting point because you would think, you're safe in the US. Maybe you can safely practice Judaism in Israel, but you're probably safer in the US. You don't need to have these basements that you go into when sirens go off. But yeah, you kind of see it the other way. Like having the safety to practice is perhaps more important. It might be more important to more Jews in the long run here.
Yeah, and there's it's just a different kind of danger, I guess. And hopefully we will defeat this current threat and it won't be a long-term situation. And there is that safety and feeling that you're not the minority. It's the only place in the world where you're not the minority. Your government, is fighting for you to live and to practice your religion, versus here where currently I think the government has been very supportive of Israel and making statements that we're against anti-Semitism and we're against Islamophobia as well. But we in terms of how people are feeling. I know that my sister-in-law's sister in New York had someone yelling slurs outside of her apartment.
Yeah.
About a week ago, anti-Semitic slurs outside of her apartment. You read in the news about there was a car ramming, someone trying to hit a Jewish, it wasn't actually a Jewish building, but they were attempting to hit a Jewish building, someone getting hurt in at some sort of counter protest. I don't know all the details of that, but you hear these things and you see some of these protests which have anti-Semitic elements to them. And I went to the University of Pennsylvania and I'm seeing how they're not, they may write an email saying that they a very delayed email saying that they support that they're they're anti-Semitism and things like that. But first of all, it took a long time to get that email out, and second of all, there has yet to we haven't seen any action in terms of trying to actually improve the experience for the Jewish students on campus to help them actually be more secure and to make any statements against teachers or students who are making these anti-Semitic statements and threats in the school. So you see these things in the US, and when I see that, I'm grateful to have Israel. And I think you can see that when Israel's under attack, Jews all over the world are under attack. So yeah, in that way, it's just a different kind of safety. There's the safety, obviously the running to shelter is a feeling of not being safe, but then there's the feeling of being a minority in America, being unsafe and under threat in that way, and not being able to practice. So yeah, it depends on your I guess your priorities and your feelings of safety and how you weigh that, and your values and all of those different elements together in deciding where you want to live your life. But for me, I'd rather feel like I'm in a country that I can I can, observe my religion in freedom. And if there's a threat to that, my country is there to protect me.
A hopeful vision for
Yeah.
Israel beyond this war. Maybe the first one I've heard since this happened a month ago. So thank you for that. Appreciate you joining us today. Viva Mensch.
Thank you for
Thanks.
having me on.